At future hearings, I'd ask that she not be shackled. I have a relationship with her. I've represented her before. I think we have a good relationship, and I'd ask that you consider my request for her not to be shackled during the trial or any future proceedings.
Should Shabusiness be unshackled? The infamous inmate Taylor Shabusiness back in court today for her prison attack case. And singer David hires a Hollywood attorney to represent him. And you might remember that lawyer from a recent high-profile California case that we showed you. Also this hour, will Ellen Greenberg's family finally get justice? Her parents are speaking out ahead of the upcoming hearing on their daughter's case. Plus, was defendant Bianca Ellis insane? The footage that could tip the scales of justice in the toddler-stabbed murder trial. It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Wednesday morning to you, my friends. Welcome to Opening Statements. I'm Julie Grant. Are you ready for some coffee and some court? This is the program where we get you all warmed up every weekday morning to get you ready for the big day ahead on Court TV Live. And it's going to be a big day for trials, and we got a big show planned with big guests. Can't wait to bring them in. All right, here we go. Let's start things off as we always do. Grab that cup of coffee. It's time for my opening statement. I'm suspicious of defendant Brian Walsh and his sudden onset of incompetency. This guy was set to go to trial on October 20th. He's accused of murdering his wife, Anna, and disposing of her remains. Last month, Walsh was stabbed in jail. Now, his attorneys say that the stabbing has taken such a toll on him mentally and physically that he's no longer competent to stand trial 2 weeks from now. So the case has been postponed. Walsh is being sent to a state hospital for mental health evaluations. I've got to tell you, though, my friends, I'm not buying that he's suddenly incompetent. I think he's suffering from things just got real syndrome. Prosecutors have mountains of incriminating evidence that they're ready to introduce against this guy. And if they win, he's going to have to worry about getting stabbed in prison every day for the rest of his life. That is the reality. Prison is not a pleasant place. But if Brian Walsh did in fact murder his wife, Anna, and if he did in fact dismember her body, depriving her of life and depriving their 3 children of their mom, then he should not only be in prison, I say he should be under the prison. That's my opening statement. Let me know if you like it. Right now, it's time for your daily docket.
There are many, many defendants sitting in the county jail right now who would love me to reduce their bail so they can hire Alan Jackson or other private counsel, but that's not the way it works.
In California, we've got defendant Michael Baum back in court for a pretrial conference hearing at 11:30 a.m. He's accused of crashing into and killing 4 sorority sisters in Malibu. In Ohio, we've got testimony resuming this morning in the toddler-stabbed murder trial for Bianca Ellis. Victim Julian Wood's mother, Margot, is expected to take the stand today. That's going to get underway at 8:30 a.m. Eastern. We'll keep you posted when it does. And in Wisconsin, we've got defendant Taylor Shabusiness back in court. This is for her prison attack case. The infamous inmate is wanting her shackles and restraints removed for future court dates. Now, at her last hearing in June, Shabusiness was wheeled into court, all restrained in her chair. Now, she's facing trial for battery against a jail nurse and a jail guard. She's already serving a life prison sentence for the murder and the dismemberment of her boyfriend, Shad Therian. As you know, her behavior in court, it's been a hot topic. Look at this. We've seen her attacking her attorneys multiple times, first in 2023 and then most recently in April of 2025. Her attorney from April withdrew after she lunged at him, and now she's back with the attorney who represented her for her murder trial. And he says that he has a good relationship with Ms. Shabusiness. He thinks the shackles should come off.
So the last time we were in court, we were scheduled for a preliminary hearing At the preliminary hearing, there was an outburst by Ms. Shabusiness. At that point, she was tackled to the floor and she was removed from court.
Today, my client is in a chair with wheels. Her legs are strapped, her waist is strapped, and she's got handcuffs on. I would ask respectfully to the court, at future hearings, I'd ask that she not be shackled. I have a relationship with her. I've represented her before. I think we have a good relationship, and I'd ask that you consider my request for her not to be shackled during the trial or any future proceedings.
So, should Shabusiness be unshackled? That's our first question we want to tackle this morning. Let's bring in our guests. Retired Chief Judge Belvin Perry is with us, and retired NYPD Detective Tom Smith with us as well. Good morning to you, gentlemen. And Your Honor, I just want to say on behalf of all of us at Court TV, congratulations on your well-deserved retirement after such an illustrious career.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us today. And I want to start with you, Judge. So here this judge has to make a big decision today, whether to unshackle Ms. Shabusiness, as you know. How do you think the court should come down here?
Well, the short answer to that is that she should not be shackled, but the court has to go through this process. We have the 5th and 14th Amendment that says you cannot routinely shackle or use restraints that are visible to a jury. The court is going to look at several factors in making the decision. 1, preventing flight, that is escaping from the courtroom, threat of violence, and maintaining the order and decorum of the courtroom. In this particular case, we have documented proof based upon her prior behavior that she presents a great threat of violence to people in that courtroom. And the court could, at that time, order that she be restrained. The court, Julie, will look at, is there a less restrictive alternative? I have used numerous times in capital murder cases a stun belt, which is placed around the victim, and if they act up, then the court deputies will engage that stun belt. So based upon her behavior, the answer is she should be shackled in court.
This is really helpful, Judge, because there were layers to this. I think for many of our courties, this is fascinating, myself included, because we can't have the appearance that she's a danger that would prejudice her case for the jury, but yet we do know that she has a history of violent, assaultive behavior. We have to protect everyone. So as you said, something discreet, like the stun belt that could be underneath the clothing and controlled by the deputy, seems to be a really good, happy medium here. Detective Smith, I want to turn to you on the dangers of defendants like Taylor Shabusiness. I always say I think police have the toughest job in America, and I really mean that. Encountering people like her, and when you are on the street, you don't know what someone's history is. At least with her, we have an idea at this point what she could do. Would you talk to us about some of the precautions that police have to take and go through?
Oh, there's a number of them, especially when you know someone who has a history of this. You know, it's self-preservation. You know, police officers on the street have the right to defend themselves. And when you encounter people like this, it becomes somewhat of a fight sometimes, as you've seen with this individual. And the thing with her is she's very manipulative. So she set up the staple in her hand to get into the infirmary to attack an officer. So not only does she have a history of attacking her attorneys, she now has a history of attacking law enforcement officers or court officers. So that all becomes a big problem when it comes to the safety of everyone in that courtroom, like the judge pointed out. But dealing with them on the street is always dangerous. And that's what police officers have to encounter every single day. Because like you said, Julie, they don't know who they're dealing with. And when you're dealing with someone who has a violent background, everyone's in danger.
Yeah, God bless you and all your brothers and sisters in law enforcement, Tom. Not an easy job at all, and I know that it's often a thankless job too, and we appreciate your service. I want to show you both something that our courtiers could not stop talking about. I couldn't stop looking at it or thinking of this image, how when at one of the hearings, she had to be brought in with a spit hood, presumably because of what she was doing in custody, and many folks thought she looked like Hannibal Lecter. And even in this video here where she's strapped into the chair, look at this. I mean, the similarities. Many of our viewers have said that that's kind of what they get. They get the Silence of the Lamb vibes looking at her, that you have this dangerous, out of control prisoner. Oh, and there she blows a kiss, just like you were saying, Tom. She's manipulative. Judge Perry, let me go back to you, please. When we think about the spectacle and avoiding the spectacle, here I see that video and I think, oh, something bad must have gone on for her to be strapped into that chair and coming into the courtroom like that. What do you think about in terms of the public perception of her? Do we think that it can be controlled by what's shown during the trial, and that jurors in the pool of people won't be influenced by these videos from the pretrial appearances?
Well, most definitely they're going to be influenced by it. The question is whether or not they can set aside what they have seen or gleaned from news accounts about her behavior and decide the case solely upon the evidence as applied to the law. If they can do that, then they can serve. That's only a question that prospective jurors can ask during the jury selection process.
Yes, and we know she's become infamous. People know the name Taylor Shabusiness now, especially in the true crime community. People know her, and you're right, that's not an automatic reason for her to be, for a juror to be stricken. As long as they can follow the law and the evidence, as you said, Judge, they can serve. We'll find out if she wants to go judge or jury with this trial that's coming up. We don't really know. But Detective Smith, let me go back to you on some of the manipulation you're seeing. I want to hear more. Sizing her up, give us kind of your assessment of what you think we're dealing with, this woman who we know did in fact kill and dismember her lover.
Well, she's certainly disturbed and has a mental incapacitation, but I think a lot of it is playing to the camera. You know, the more attention she gets, you know, the more jury pools get influenced. You know, juries can't look at, you know, TVs and newspapers while they're sequestered during a trial, but they're seeing all of this right now before maybe a jury pool gets put together. So they're seeing this act, this, you know, this spectacle in front of them before they even get into a courtroom possibly. And I think that's part of her plan with this.
Yes, I think you're exactly right, Detective. Judge, let me go to you on that point. If we think that she is playing to the cameras, and we've seen her make moments, so to speak, in many of her hearings and at her last trial, what might you do as a judge to control that or deter that behavior?
Well, one of the things you can do, and it's drastic, but you can do it, is if she acts out, you can have her removed from the courtroom, and you can have her in a separate location where she can see the proceedings by closed circuit and have devices where she can communicate with her attorney through even a cell phone. So those are things that you can do. But the bottom line, Julie, is at some point, she's going to have to act up. And you use the restraints to try to keep her from acting up. But if she acts up, you can remove her from the courtroom and the trial can be done without her. I've done that on at least one occasion.
There you go. Judge Belvin Perry, Detective Tom Smith, great conversation with both of you. We'll stand by for what Shabusiness brings us later today for this hearing. Great having your insights and expertise, you two. We'll see you soon. Thanks so much. And coming up next here on Opening Statements, we are going to California for the investigation into Celeste Hernandez's death.
I was such an internet kid. The internet is really what I claim as my home. Like, if you ask me where I'm from, I say the internet, because I was just online every day doing my schoolwork, making songs, making a video, being a YouTuber, content creator, posting TikToks, posting on Instagram. Like, that's really my neighborhood was Instagram and the society was the internet. You know what I'm saying?
Now Mr. Internet's got a Hollywood attorney. We'll talk about that. Plus, Ellen Greenberg's family is fighting for justice for over a decade, and now they're speaking out ahead of a huge hearing happening next week.
This week,
We're spotlighting the biggest cases that are trending in true crime. Plus, we're being a voice for victims as October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
opening statements with Julie Grant. Mornings at 8/7 Central on Court TV.
I'm Vinny Politan. Welcome to Closing Arguments.
What's happening here?
It's unreal. Let me show you exactly what happened.
Closing Arguments with Vinny Politan. Tonight at 8/7 Central. Only on Court TV.
Welcome back. We have new details emerging about the teenager who was found in the trunk of singer David's Tesla. According to police records, sheriff's deputies in Lake Elsinore, California visited Celeste Hernandez's family home 11 times between February and April of 2024. Think about that, 11 times during those few months, including 3 visits on March 19th of that year. Now, TMZ is reporting that most of these calls were listed as minor crime investigation, and one was for suspicious circumstances. The teenager we know was reported missing on April the 5th of 2024. And in a video obtained by TMZ, Hernandez's casket was seen carried to her final resting place. Look at this. On Monday, family and friends of Hernandez gathered together to say their final goodbyes as the slain teenager was laid to rest. And as the investigation rolls on, no one has been charged. So what comes next in the case investigation, and what can we expect? Let's talk about that. Let's bring in retired NYPD detective Tom Smith and attorneys Casey Early and Franz Borchardt. Good morning to you all. Detective Smith, let me begin with you. What do you think should come next here?
Well, they're going to continue to look at the evidence. They're going to continue to do interviews, and they're awaiting the final disposition of the autopsy. That's going to be a big part in this to determine the actual cause of death of this young girl. And that is going to, proceed forward with where the investigation goes from there. But as of right now, they're doing what they should do. Just a number of interviews, any data, footprint that she has, going through everyone's social media just to see any connection or any lead that might come up with this young girl's past.
Appreciate it, Tom. Franz, let me go to you. Tapping into your experience as a former prosecutor, do you think we can assume at this point in time that prosecutors in LA County are working together with those detectives as they're working the case investigation? Oh, and you know what? I think your audio might be muted, Franz. Let's take just a pause here. I'll come back to you on that question because I want to hear about the prosecution perspective. Let me jump ahead. Casey, look at things from the defense perspective, if you would, for us here. In terms of what may be happening and rights, thinking about that vehicle, we know it's registered to David, but clearly abandoned, and there is evidence that many other people were using that car from what's been reported. What are some of the things, Casey, that these detectives need to be extra careful about in terms of search and seizure as they're collecting those pieces of evidence, please?
Well, we know this is a purely circumstantial case, although there's too many coincidences. From the standpoint as a defense attorney, the matching tattoos, the fact that they were supposedly in a relationship, the age difference, it still is circumstantial. There's no direct evidence he had not made a confession, although there was a song. That song was written a few years prior to this incident. So this still is a great case for the defense, but again, they would have to overcome some of these mere coincidences. There's speculation as to a possible motive that the defense should be working to rebut, that the Ms. Hernandez was possibly pregnant, considering their age gap, 14 at the time, he's 19 now. He faced potential prior maybe potential sexual battery charges of a minor. So the defense has to prepare in advance of what the possible motive that the prosecution can possibly bring forth. But other than that, this is a purely circumstantial case.
Yeah, for sure, Casey. And we did get some information too. I can tell you that they did confirm that she was not pregnant at the time, but as you all know, still doesn't mean there wasn't a sexual battery here that may have gone on, because we know that there was an age difference between her and David. So if they were in fact in a sexual relationship, could still mean charges. We'll see what happens. Franz, let's do a take two, going from the perspective of these prosecutors. Might they be working with the detectives?
Yes. So it's all about making the case, right? It's finding out who did the crime, and then how are we going to make the case? The detective generally is the quarterback, but a good prosecutor working in concert with law enforcement is kind of like the head coach. And they're going to be the ones that ultimately have to present this to the grand jury and possibly to a petit jury. So, you know, working in concert's always the way to go. I always enjoyed going to crime scenes because it gave me that third eye view of this is what it looks like, this is what it smells like, pictures don't do that justice. You can't recreate certain things that way. So I have no doubt that they're working in concert together. And look, just because there isn't an arrest yet doesn't mean that there's not going to be one. It's all about making the case and making sure they have everything they need to make sure they have the right person and they can ultimately get a conviction.
Definitely, Franz, definitely. Tom Smith, while we have you, isn't it true that you detectives are always 3 steps ahead of what the public and the media will ever know?
Well, we hope that. That's a good impression to leave with everyone. But both guys came up with great points with this, because the relationship between detectives and DAs is so important, because you want to rely on both parties' experience and what they're doing and what they can bring to this case. And the other part is, you know, detectives can't think too highly of one particular person. You have to keep an open mind when it comes to this case, because it might not be what we're all looking at. It might be something else, and that's why all these parties need to work together to run down all these leads of anything possible that could happen with this.
Definitely. Having that legal guidance from prosecutors, always a good thing for the case investigators. Tom, thank you for that. Let's turn to another aspect of this. So while the investigation continues, singer David has hired a very prominent criminal defense attorney. So his legal name is David Anthony Burke, but goes by the singing name David. And his attorney's name is Blair Burke. Different spelling. B-U-R-K-E is singer's last name, and B-E-R-K is the attorney's name. So Blair Burke, the attorney, no stranger to high-profile cases. We have a list of his notable clients here: Harvey Weinstein, Lindsay Lohan, Kanye West, Mel Gibson, Britney Spears. And many of our courties remember seeing him recently as he represented Monica Sementilli in the celebrity hairstylist murder case.
The prosecution has described to you this great life Monica was having because of Fabio's salary and the lifestyle that afforded. The prosecution has told you the facts will be that Fabio and Monica went on these wonderful trips to Cabo, to Mexico. Why? Because he was awarded, as long as he was working, these trips for free. So what happens if Fabio Sementilli is dead? What possible benefit would Monica Sementilli have for cutting herself off from that, what Ms. Silverman described as a lavish lifestyle?
All right, so there was a little sample of what attorney Blair Burke can do in the courtroom. That is her representing Monica Cementilli, and now she's representing David for whatever comes next. So our next question to the power panel is kind of a fill-in-the-blank question. David's new attorney will what his defense? What will this attorney do for his defense? Casey Early, what do you think, please?
Provide that consistent, zealous advocacy that she's known to do for all of her other clients. And as she should. I mean, David has the financial resources. It's not like he's indigent. He's not going to have an assistant public defender. So you utilize those resources that you've gained from your society, living on the internet all your life and you know, appealing to the masses to get that strong defense if you ever want to go back on trial. So he's preparing early, as he should. I mean, again, right now, he appears to be the prime suspect, and I do believe he knows that there could be possible charges. So have that defense team early, because this is going to be a long trial.
Yeah, great advice, Casey. Franz, to you next, please. Take us home here. What do you think this attorney will do for the defense?
I think she's going to proactively prosecute a defense, which is to say that she is going to be vocal about how her client is not only not guilty, but innocent. She's going to start perpetuating theories. She's good. Let's not mince words. I mean, if you can't have Casey or Josh Schiffer, this is a good one to have. And I think that
Franz Borghardt, don't leave yourself out of that mix.
Humility.
Stop.
So my point is I think that zealousness sometimes means prosecuting, and I use that word intentionally, prosecuting a defense. And that's being on the offensive. And I think that that's what she is really good at. And I think that this is going to be a formidable display of opposition with the county DA. And that's a good thing. We need that for justice.
Yeah, sure do. Great point to end on there. We'll leave it there for now. Great talk with you all. Detective Tom Smith, thank you so much for making time for us this morning. We'll see you soon. Franz and Casey are coming with us. Do the same at home, please. When we come back, here's what's next for you.
I saw a woman stabbing a mother and child. I saw the knife covered in blood. I saw violent motions towards a mother and her child.
Defendant Bianca Ellis isn't denying that she did the stabbing that killed Julian Wood, but what she's contesting is her sanity at the time. Plus, what really happened to Ellen Greenberg? Her parents are speaking out about her mysterious death and the case being reopened. Welcome back. Our spotlight this morning is shining on Pennsylvania in the case of 27-year-old Ellen Greenberg. The school teacher was found dead in her apartment in 2011. She had 20 stab wounds to her body, on the front of her body and some to the back of her neck and the back of her head. The case was somehow ruled a suicide. Her then fiancé told police that he found her after returning from the gym. Now, no one has ever been charged in the case, but Ellen Greenberg's parents are speaking out with friend of the show, Joel Waldman, on his podcast, Surviving the Survivor. They're looking ahead to a hearing scheduled for next week, and we're wondering, will they finally get answers?
The 14th, I would hope that the city of Philadelphia actually produces what they have to produce, and we get everything we need then. That's what I would hope. The review of Ellen's death is one of the major things there. The medical examiner, as far as I know, should be done because you can't exhume the body. All she can look at is records, photographs and records. And how long is that going to take? I don't know.
Yeah, how long might it take? Well, let's bring our own forensic pathology expert on the show, Dr. Priya Banerjee, and talk about that alongside attorney Franz Borghardt, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor. Good morning to you both. Dr. Priya, would you weigh in on that? About how long should this reevaluation take, please?
Sure. So, I mean, it should be the case file and photographs, right? The exam is already done. And so I don't think it should take that long in the sense that the report's written and you have the findings. So you just have to reassess in totality. You're not going to run any more toxicology or any other exams. So I think it should be pretty, I don't want to say straightforward, but self-contained, if you will, and the doctor now can come to their own assessment.
Appreciate it, Dr. Priya. Right now, the designation is something other than suicide. Which, you know, and in all the cases, the death cases you have had, Franz, either as a prosecutor or defense attorney, have you ever seen that kind of designation listed on an autopsy report?
I'll answer with this. I've seen that about as much as I've seen a suicide classified with somebody stabbing themselves in the back. It just doesn't, I mean, it doesn't happen. This is Earth. We're not on Mars. That, you know, and what's unfortunate is this new independent or this new analysis, that doctor is in a trick bag because a crafty defense attorney is going to say, well, wait a minute. It took you how long to figure out that which couldn't be figured out for how many years? So if they do it too fast, it almost provides some fuel for a good defense. But if they do it too long, it's just more justice delayed. But look, Julie, I've said this often. I am baffled at how this one got classified in the way and manner in which it does. It stinks to high heaven. It just doesn't pass the smell test. And hopefully that family is going to get some answers sooner rather than later.
Yes, yes, Franz, I agree with everything you just said. Dr. Priya, tapping into your experience, have you ever had a suicide that occurred by way of an individual stabbing themselves to death?
Yes. So, you know, I always start very skeptical in any kind of injury pattern. And yes, I have had quite a few suicides, you know, that come to mind that were ultimately ones that I ruled suicide, okay? But it took a lot of analysis. I went to the crime scenes myself. We did blood spatter analysis, and they were all areas that the decedent could reach, okay? And the injuries that were there, some were superficial, some were fatal, but all within the person's reach. In this case, I am very concerned about the upper neck injuries that would likely debilitate her function of the hands, like it would paralyze her. Although I've read the report that said the spinal cord wasn't injured, I can't quite synthesize that. The diagram's very telling that right there, that's the upper spinal cord, and it's showing that the knife entered the spinal column. And so to me, this would render her paralyzed and unable to continue to stab herself if that was the case. So that's my concern here. But in the past, I've had separate cases that were consistent with suicide and extensive psychiatric history as well.
Appreciate that. And Dr. Priya, if you can recall, were these cases ones with numerous wounds like this one, or was there one? There were numerous ones. Interesting. Okay.
Yes.
How about
yes. So
wounds on the wrist?
Multiple...
Any cutting there?
So right, I can't remember all the specifics. I'm sorry, and there's multiple cases.
I know, I'm putting you on the spot.
But I've had one of them was a woman with quite a bit of history, and I think there were over 90 stab wounds to herself. But and then a man with probably 10 or 12 in the front. So I've had quite a variety of them. Sometimes you do see hesitation. I think that's what you're talking about, potentially hesitation marks at the wrists. You know, sometimes we start with more superficial wounds, like that's a natural sort of response, whether you can tolerate the pain and then proceed to more lethal wounds. But again, it has to be all in context and in totality, that whether the wounds would be fatal, potentially the order of the wounds. In the cases I can recall, the weapon was not left in the body, but found at the scene. And again, it had to be in context of severe mental illness and we were able to determine no one else was there. So there's, other elements that need to be addressed before I would feel comfortable even going suicide. And undetermined may be more suitable in cases that are, on the fence.
Right, because that is actually a designation. It's one of the 5 that's proper. That's
Correct.
something other than suicide that's like made up. Somebody just
That's
decided.
weird. I've never written that.
Right, I'm sure you have not. Right, and Franz has never seen. I've never seen. It's crazy. I want to. You touched on something, Dr. Priya, that's so key to this, and it's the fact pattern of whether there was anyone else in the apartment. That is a big looming question here. Fiancé Josh Goldberg, and I want to be very clear, he was never considered a person of interest, never charged. He did give this statement to CNN. He said, when Ellen took her own life, it left me bewildered. She was a wonderful and kind person who had everything to live for. In the years that have passed, I have had to endure the pathetic and despicable attempts to desecrate my reputation by creating a narrative that embraces lies, distortions, and falsehoods. Okay, so I want to be very clear. That is his side of this, that she did this to herself. Franz, right now as this has been reopened, can we assume that he's being re-interviewed and questioned by new, fresh detectives?
If he is submitting to those interviews without raising constitutional privilege, yes, I would imagine that he is. And look, the most bizarre part of this to me is his knee-jerk reaction when he discovers her, when he encounters, look, the crime scene had to be brutal. It had to be horrific. His reaction was, she stabbed herself? Wouldn't the knee-jerk reaction be someone killed my fiance? So I think I'm sorry, this is just, if he's smart, he'd keep his mouth shut. But as we know, individuals that sometimes commit crimes, Julie, don't always use that part of their brain of intelligence. So, I think he's gotten used to and comfortable making statements. So anything he says can be used against him. But to be sure, to answer your question, to be sure, he's being interviewed again.
Yeah, and great points you made, Franz. You're right. If he says, I want an attorney present and all that, things are going to go very differently than they would if he's just willingly going in on his own, if he's going in at all. So we will see. But again, he has not been charged, not even named a person of interest, or not saying anything of the sort. So we'll leave it at that and get ready for this big hearing on the 14th coming up for the Greenbergs. Franz, thank you kindly. Dr. Priya, thank you kindly. Great discussion with you both. When we come back, we're talking about Bianca Ellis. Is she insane? We know that she stabbed a toddler to death, and we're gearing up for a big day in court in just minutes.
I'm Vinny Politan. Welcome to Closing Arguments.
What's happening here?
It's unreal. Let me show you exactly what happened.
Closing Arguments with Vinny Politan, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
A wife accused of murdering her prominent attorney husband, and the defense involves blaming her own sons?
Victim to Verdict with Ted Rollins. New episode Saturday night, 8 Eastern and Pacific.
Only on Court TV.
Now for what's tipping the scales in the toddler stabbed murder trial, Bianca Ellis accused of murdering 3-year-old Julian Wood and trying to murder his mother, Margot. It happened in a parking lot in a Cleveland area grocery store back in June of last year. Tuesday, the jury got to see some surveillance footage. Look at these. You see Bianca Ellis stealing knives from a thrift store right before walking to the grocery store. Later on, the jury saw her going into the supermarket and following the victims out into the parking lot. Now, here's what's key here. She's not denying that she did these stabbings. What she's denying is legal culpability because of her mental state. Her team is saying that she was legally insane at the time, meaning she could not understand or appreciate the wrongfulness of her actions. But the state of Ohio sees it differently. They believe she did know the wrongfulness of her actions. So let's talk about this. Let's bring in criminal defense and civil rights attorney Casey Early and forensic psychiatrist Dr. Carol Lieberman. Dr. Carol, let me start with you here, please. What are some of the things that you would want to know about Bianca Ellis in order to make that determination of sanity?
Well, the first thing you want to know is the person's history. Was she ever declared, was she ever diagnosed with a mental illness? And in this case, she was. About 10 years ago, she was diagnosed as schizophrenic. So that's always good to have if you are the defense psychiatrist, because you can point to that. Now, in her history, she was being treated, but she would go there off and on and take her medicines off and on. And in the last 6 months before she stabbed baby Julian, her mother had lost track of her, and she apparently was traveling all around from Ohio to California, back to Ohio to Florida to Ohio again, and was off her meds. So theoretically, if someone is schizophrenic and they're off their meds, it is certainly possible, if not likely, that they are in a psychotic state. However, what we know about her, I don't think we have that. First of all, she bought the knives. There is some degree of intent there. She went to a police station right before she bought the knives, and she had an altercation with them. So perhaps they say she was angry. So perhaps, she bought the knives. She was feeling angry, and she either wanted to protect herself or wanted to attack someone. So, and then, of course, at the arraignment, she was acting very strange. She was talking in Spanish, and she was sitting in the jail. She was sitting on the floor naked. So there are these things, but those two things seem like crazy like a fox. Was she purposely? She's been around. And it seems like she knows what to do. A lot of times, people who are chronically mentally ill do get to know what gets them arrested and so on. So I would be on the side of her not being not guilty by reason of insanity.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating that you're skeptical, Dr. Carol. Thank you for that. In terms of the viability of this defense before this jury, Casey, I want to talk to you about that. Your thoughts on it, please.
Yes, Julie, typically with cases where there's surveillance, it's very hard for the defense because there's no real theory of defense that can be different from what the jury sees. And what we see is she was in the store next door, she got the knife, and she went into the grocery store and she followed. Although she didn't hide the knife, you see that there's a clear indication of who her target was. And it's going to be very hard to persuade the jury that she did not know what she did and she did not appreciate the wrongfulness of her actions. I'm looking at the surveillance, and there were reports that although she walked away and although she was found with the same knife, there's still an indication that she knew exactly what she was doing, and whether it was mental illness or were you just upset from other events or just really had a bad day and took it out on an innocent victim. And that is the job of the defense, to really bring this forth, not just through testimony, but through expert testimony, her mental history, to show this pattern at the time of this alleged incident.
Right. Great points, Casey. As I look at that video, Dr. Carol, I'd love to ask you about something that I raised on the show yesterday. When we see her blatantly walking through that store, and she's hard to miss. She's very large in stature, and she's got this big 12-inch knife in her hand that she's swinging around. This is a busy store, lots of people. And I was saying, Dr. Carol, I don't know if people are just unobservant or if they just, I don't want to offend anybody and say anything because, I want to mind my business. And I'm thinking, where are we as a society? I would love your comments on this, Dr. Carol.
Yes, I totally agree. I think she is a large woman. She does look strong. I think some people would be afraid to tackle her, literally. But surely there must have been some security guards in there. That's the sad part. There were possibilities to stop this. Well, first of all, the one thing is that, her mother was very angry at the clinic that she was going to because she wanted them to do more. They can't control her in terms of making her take medication when she's not there.
Right.
But they said she's not a danger to self or others, so they can't hospitalize her. So there could have been ways to stop it.
Yeah, boy, I wish we had more time. We're out of time. But yeah, this is a great conversation. We'll continue it. Dr. Carol Lieberman, thank you so much. Casey Early, thank you so much.